It was meant to be a feel-good segment, a moment of reconciliation and fresh beginnings as Meghan Markle returned to British television for the first time since stepping back from royal duties. And Loose Women, with its panel of sharp, seasoned hosts and an unpredictable live audience, was chosen as the venue for this symbolic appearance. ITV had prepared for weeks, carefully coordinating the logistics, publicizing the guest spot, and delicately negotiating with Meghan's media team, who insisted on multiple boundaries regarding what could and could not be discussed on air. And while the producers nodded in agreement, they also understood the real appeal of the episode lay in the tension simmering beneath the surface. This was more than an interview. This was a collision of ideologies, personalities, and unresolved national sentiments that had festered for years since Harry and Meghan's infamous Oprah sit-down. The tension backstage was palpable even before the show began, with Meghan sitting in the green room flanked by two publicists and sipping herbal tea in near silence, while across the hallway, Denise Welch, known for her no-nonsense candor and vocal opinions on nearly every hot-button issue in Britain, paced the corridor like a boxer before a bout, occasionally muttering under her breath about privilege, victimhood, and media games. Ruth Langsford attempted to lighten the mood during rehearsal, but it was clear to the staff and the producers watching from the control room that the two women were on a collision course, and not even the cheerful pastel backdrop or smiling audience could dilute the volatility brewing between them. And as the live countdown began and Meghan was ushered on stage to warm applause, she smiled with graceful poise, waved politely, and even leaned in to greet each host, including Denise, who returned the gesture with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and the conversation began pleasantly enough. Meghan spoke about her recent children's book, her philanthropic endeavors, and the new podcast aimed at empowering women's voices, and as she talked, she exuded the familiar blend of Californian warmth and polished articulation that had both enchanted and alienated large swaths of the British public. But then, as the segment progressed and viewers at home watched the panel navigate toward more personal questions, it was Denise who finally cut through the pleasantries, her voice steady but unmistakably challenging, asking, "But Meghan, don't you think it's a bit rich to speak about being silenced when you've had global platforms handed to you to tell your side repeatedly? Some might say you've had more voice than most people ever get in a lifetime." The audience reacted with a sharp collective inhale, and even Ruth looked up in surprise, but Meghan, unfazed, responded with a calm smile, explaining that having a platform doesn't always mean being heard authentically, especially when headlines distort context and misrepresent intent. Yet her answer, while measured, seemed only to fuel Denise's growing frustration, and the host leaned forward, her voice gaining edge as she brought up the alleged feuds, staff complaints, and the now infamous claims about the royal family, saying, "You talk about mental health, and I respect that, but can't you acknowledge that some people feel you've manipulated that narrative when it suited you? That you cry victim but also demand admiration?" And suddenly the air in the studio thickened, the atmosphere turned electric, and Meghan's previously composed demeanor began to shift, the corners of her mouth tightening ever so slightly, and she replied that questioning someone's mental health narrative was a dangerous path that contributed to stigma. And while she was here to talk about moving forward, it seemed some people wanted to drag her back into a space of pain and judgment. Denise didn't back down. She shot back with a remark about accountability, asking why Meghan continued to profit off the very system she claimed to despise, mentioning the Netflix documentaries, the book deals, and the curated image of rebellion turned brand. And as she spoke, audience members could be heard murmuring, the energy shifting from curiosity to discomfort to outright tension. And when Meghan interrupted to say, "I came here in good faith, to speak my truth, not to be ambushed," Denise immediately countered with, "It's not an ambush if it's just honesty, love," drawing gasps and a few awkward laughs from the audience. And at that moment, the producers in the control room knew the segment had veered off script entirely. Meghan stood up mid-sentence, removed her mic, and said, "If this is the kind of conversation you wanted, you could have said so from the start. I'm not here for another tabloid hit job dressed up as dialogue." And she turned to leave, ignoring the pleas of Ruth and Nadia to sit back down and finish the discussion. But the damage had been done, and as she walked off stage, cameras still rolling, the internet erupted almost immediately. Within minutes, clips were circulating on Twitter, hashtags trended worldwide, and the media frenzy reignited like wildfire, dissecting every word, every gesture, every expression on both women's faces, and by the time ITV released a statement hours later confirming that Meghan would not be returning for the second half of the interview, the moment had already etched itself into the cultural memory of British television history, not merely as a celebrity walkout, but as a symbolic reckoning between two worlds, one shaped by royalty and curated grace, the other by raw honesty and defiant realism, and the fallout was only just beginning. The fallout from Meghan Markle's walkout on Loose Women was immediate and relentless, engulfing social media platforms, television broadcasts, and online tabloids in a tsunami of speculation, praise, condemnation, and fierce tribalism. Within the first hour, the show's official X, formerly Twitter, account was inundated with hundreds of thousands of comments, some applauding Denise Welch's bravery to speak the truth, while others lambasted her for bullying a guest on live TV, and Meghan's departure quickly became the top trending story in both the UK and the US, eclipsing even political headlines and major world events. And while the panel attempted to continue the episode with forced smiles and shallow commentary on other news items, the energy in the studio remained palpably shaken, with Nadia Sawalha visibly struggling to steer the discussion away from the chaotic segment everyone had just witnessed. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team was in crisis mode, already drafting a carefully worded statement for release to the press, one that would frame her departure not as an impulsive walkout, but as an intentional act of boundary setting in the face of provocation disguised as journalism, and by mid-afternoon, her spokesperson had issued a formal comment emphasizing the importance of respectful dialogue, citing her departure as a stand against sensationalist narratives and hostile environments that endanger mental health. And while the statement was polished and diplomatically worded, it did little to dampen the roaring firestorm erupting across British media, with panel debates erupting on shows like Good Morning Britain and This Morning, pitting commentators against one another in fierce arguments about freedom of expression, public accountability, and whether Meghan Markle was unfairly targeted or simply unable to tolerate uncomfortable truths. Meanwhile, Denise Welch, unshaken by the backlash, posted a defiant video to her Instagram account later that evening, filmed in her garden with a mug of tea in hand and no makeup, addressing the situation head-on by saying she had no regrets about what she said, that she stood by her words, and that it was about time someone popped the Hollywood bubble and asked real questions, and her directness only further polarized the public. Some hailed her as a hero for standing her ground, while others accused her of undermining women and weaponizing her platform against another woman who had spoken openly about suicidal ideation and media trauma. But what no one expected was that the controversy would spill beyond social media and into the offices of ITV executives, who were now fielding angry calls from both advertisers and legal consultants, with some sponsors threatening to pull out if the show didn't issue an apology, while others demanded Denise be reprimanded. And as internal tensions rose, Meghan's lawyers quietly began reviewing footage of the incident, evaluating whether any defamation had occurred or if the network had breached any part of their prior contractual agreements about what topics were off-limits, especially in light of Meghan's explicit request to avoid questions that revisited her past claims about the royal family. The next morning, The Sun, Daily Mail, and Mirror each ran blistering front-page spreads dissecting the exchange, and while Meghan was criticized in some editorials for storming off like a diva, there were others, particularly in The Guardian and The Independent, who called out Loose Women for its gotcha-style ambush and toxic culture of confrontation, turning the incident into a cultural litmus test for how society views women who dare to speak out. And the incident soon ballooned beyond the TV world as celebrities began to weigh in. Jamila Jamil posted a fiery defense of Meghan, calling the show's conduct disgusting, while Piers Morgan gleefully tweeted that truth finally caught up with the Duchess of Delusion, a tweet that alone garnered over 1 million interactions. The situation escalated further when Harry and Meghan, through their Archewell Foundation, published an open letter the following week addressing not just the Loose Women debacle but a broader critique of British media, calling for greater accountability, respect, and safeguards for guests, particularly women of color, who are too often invited to the table only to be ridiculed, dissected, and dismissed. And the letter struck a chord, sparking op-eds, university panels, and hashtags across multiple countries, but it also reinvigorated Meghan's most vocal critics, who saw the letter as further proof of her attempt to control narratives while silencing dissent. Denise, on the other hand, doubled down in multiple interviews, appearing on Talk TV and GB News, where she was celebrated as a voice of ordinary Brits, tired of being lectured by celebrities from Montecito mansions. And while she insisted she didn't hate Meghan, she claimed there was a growing public fatigue with celebrities who make millions off telling us how oppressed they are. And in a particularly explosive interview, she even said, "If you want to heal and move forward, maybe stop making everything about yourself every time someone disagrees with you," a line that went viral almost immediately and earned both applause and furious backlash online. As the days turned into weeks, ITV quietly announced that Meghan's segment would not be rebroadcast on any of their platforms due to ongoing legal review, and it was rumored, though never officially confirmed, that both Meghan's team and Denise had been offered opportunities to reconcile on a follow-up episode, an offer Meghan reportedly declined, for her emotional safety, while Denise laughed it off, saying, "I've said my piece. No need for round two." And despite all the attempts to move past the debacle, the tension remained unresolved, lingering in public memory as one of the most shocking and divisive daytime television moments in recent history, with the clash seen not merely as a personal disagreement but as emblematic of deeper societal divides between celebrity and commoner, between victimhood and accountability, between the power of storytelling and the responsibility of truth. And with Meghan retreating once again from UK media appearances, some wondered if this would mark her final attempt to re-enter the British public square, while others believed it was just the beginning of a much larger reckoning between the institutions that shape public opinion and the individuals daring enough to challenge them.